This episode is sponsored by DGC Publishing in association with Charisma Branding. Be sure to check out BlueNosePurpleEars.com to get your copy of the animated and ebook versions of the BlueNose PurpleEars series.
My name is Justin Dismukes. I am your host, and this is Heart of the Hustle. That's right, folks. We're back with another one. And this time I am going to have David Clark on again. He's going to be reading one of his books that we're going to be promoting a whole 6 series of these children's books that he's been writing over some time now. He went from working and creating all these designs for safety measures within the facility and the DuPont building to being retired and writing a children's book series that's now been re-illustrated, animated, and is available for public consumption coming up here soon. So let's get David Clark on the line. First things first, I guess. So what you would do is basically tell me about the concept behind One Winter, even if it wasn't something that at first you had a concept for.
I'm thinking.
Think away. Think away. Did you see a train one day and just think, I'd love to see it be a plane? I'd love to see it hit a tree. Did that go through your mind at all?
No, didn't actually. Not sure. Not sure how the story ended up. I do know my original purpose was to write a children's book, and to try to write a children's book without any baggage. Wasn't trying to push a political point. I wasn't trying to push any particular moral point. I just wanted to have a book that in essence was devoid of those things purposely, and just be a fun little adventure that had nothing but happiness from one end to the other for whoever was reading it, to whoever the child was.
Yeah, and it is definitely an adventure all the way through.
You know, how I honestly, at this time, I can't remember why I decided on a train, why I decided on winter, why I decided on the various things that happen in the adventure.
It's just how your mind works, just rolling.
Yeah. And to be honest, it didn't start out as a book, actually. It started out simply as a poem. Actually, when I think about it, it actually started out as a short story, which I reduced to a poem, which I then created the artwork to kind of match the poem, although it went through so many iterations, it's hard to recognize the final product.
Was the poem called One Winter?
Yeah.
Oh.
But do I even have a copy of that original poem? No. It was one of those things where you write down and you tweak it every once in a while, and then you tweak it some more, and
it becomes
it just kind of had a life of its own. Every once in a while, I would inject some energy into it, and eventually I ended up with a story, and eventually I ended up with a poem, and then eventually I ended up with a children's book with with illustrations or whatever.
Yeah, and it has come quite far since that piece of poetry. So is any of that poetry like informed in that first writing of BlueNose PurpleEars? Is any of it pulled from that poetry itself, or was it?
Oh yeah. A lot of it's a lot of it's coming from the poetry, but I just don't have the original, so I can't honestly right now. I can't tell you how close I am to the original poem. But it was written not so much as it was written as a story, but then I made it into a poem, and then the poem ended up as, an illustrated story.
So it sounds like it went through the iterations of what BlueNose goes through, what he goes through. You
Yeah,
transformed
yeah.
not only the story but the character throughout the story.
Really, when you think about it, that's actually true, Justin. It really, I mean, it started out very narrowly focused as a little train on a track, and now I'm, Blue Nose Purple Ears is,
Adventures, adventures.
not dependent on the track. It's not dependent on being even a small train. It looks a little like a small car, but it doesn't. He
Yeah,
doesn't have to be that in there in anybody's framework. It, I'm hoping that everybody just kind of looks at it as a small, intelligent, happy, feeling individual living thing.
right. Something that everybody can basically, um,
Yeah, to
feel
identify
with,
with.
identify with.
Identify,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
exactly,
yeah. A lot
exactly.
of, in fact, when you get right down to it, if you look at all these stories, you could take different people with different personalities, different ethnic backgrounds, different languages, different nations, and plunk them in. Take the animals out and put people, individual, different types of people into those character roles, and the story would stay exactly the same.
It is interesting that it's designed as a children's book, but it really is so poetic in its nature because of how you develop the character and the storyline to go with it. That
Pretty
it
much,
could be
pretty
read
much,
for as an
pretty,
adult.
pretty much, pretty much all of the books in this series started out as at least a poem. In the case of One Winter, it started out as a story before that, but then I would say probably the other five books really just the initial intent was a poem, and except for One Winter, there was an expectation that I would take that poem and make it into a children's illustrated children's book. Okay, with One Winter, that was totally different. It started out just as a story written sometime just because felt like writing a little story, and then later it said, I think I could make this into a poem, and then I made it into a poem, and then I said, I think I can make it into a book, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
The others didn't go through that initial iteration. They kind of went. They started out as poems, but they started out as poems with the realization that they were ultimately going to be a children's book. So,
and now they've become what they have become. Now you've done a lot of work to get them to
well, I
this
don't.
point.
Yeah, I don't know. Be honest with you, Justin, we haven't made a dime on this yet, but
Not yet, but we will.
it's it's been fun. It's been it's been a fun try. It's been a fun exercise. By the way, I was gonna ask you that. I would like to, if we decide to do another book on another subject, or we
Another
decide to take
series,
someone else's book and publish it,
right?
it'll give us an idea of where the expenses are, and maybe there'll be some things in there we say, we spent two times as much for this as we could have because if we'd done it this way rather than that way. So, shrink down the individual costs of the different aspects of it. And so the total's going to be lower. So,
Identifying better solutions. But two, the reason why I jumped on this book, though, just like not to digress, but it was a good point that you made. I just like the fact that it's so interchangeable. It's a fun book, and I know you said we haven't made anything off of it yet, but I think we've made more off of it than we really realize. And the reason why is because it's such a
oh, personally, I feel enriched. I mean, this whole exercise it's been a not just a fun exercise, but an educational exercise. I mean, it's easy thing to say is write a book and sell it, right? Write a book and publish. That's one sentence, and there are so many details below that now, the way things work, that if you really want to do that and really want to do it well and really want to provide a document at the end that that has some value to the person that you're giving it to, there's so many details,
yeah, there are.
but it's so self-satisfying. It's so satisfying at the end if you truly end up with a product that we honestly believe is is a good product, regardless of whether anybody ever buys one, right?
Yeah.
It's still, that satisfaction is worth all the effort.
You're still learning the knowledge from it, what you learn from it. I mean, like I said, this will be a successful book. It'll motivate, it'll inspire, and it's not just for children, especially when you read the original copy of the original text from book one winter. That's a challenging text to read, but in general, this story, I like how
in the original.
yeah,
And
in
now,
the
am I
original,
reading
in
that
the
in the
original
original?
text.
Am I reading the original English? Or
No,
am I
no, no,
reading
no,
it?
no, no. We'll go
No.
with the easier. We'll go with the easier one. But I'm just saying in general how it allows so much diversity to be able to be involved in this book. I think is what will make this book successful.
Yeah. Well, don't know about that. Hopefully,
Well,
I
we can hope.
got some good news from my sister the other day. Good news, bad news. My sister and I have a cousin, my mother's sister's son, and my sister and I were more standard bread and butter kind of people.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
but anyway, as we grew, he was younger than me by, I would say, 5 or 6 years, and my sister is older than me by 6 years. So, there's a decade at least between her and him, and about a half a decade between me and him. And we never really, except for getting together for Christmas and Easter and the family things, we never had any kind of relationship. And to be honest with you, I can't remember the last time I talked to him. It must have been it's been half a century. Bottom line is, he died, and when he died, he even though I hadn't seen him in a half a century, and my sister hasn't seen him in probably 2 decades. Nonetheless, when he died, the will that he left my sister and myself everything he owned, which frankly boils down to a house in Florida.
Wow.
Which was a wonderful thought. And then the hurricane hit, and
no,
and did a number on the house.
the recent hurricane.
Yeah, the recent one, the one that just hit Florida, southern Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, that house was right in the Coral Gables, or one of those places down there where it was.
Well, a lovely thought, however. Though.
Yeah, so now we had all these houses that were all messed up, including this one, and then it got tied up in a legal battle. Not a battle per se. In other words, there was nobody protesting the will or any of that kind of stuff. It just, because so many houses were damaged and there were so many insurance claims and so many legal things going around related to that hurricane, who's going to pay for what, insurance companies being sued, and insurance companies suing homeowners, and this and that. But bottom line is, the courts down there are swamped with legal aspect things, and our little piece of paper trying to get that house through that legal system, just so my sister could be the executor of the will and actually do something about the property, like sell it or whatever. Right? Took a long time. Took like 6 months. But finally, the other day, my sister got a call that said finally it had made it through the judicial process, and she is now the executrix of the will, and in essence, it all boils down to pretty much about 4 or 5 motorcycles that he owned, plus a house. He didn't have any savings per se, but he did have the house, and the motorcycles are worth something. So,
wow.
So
I've been looking for
process.
a bike just for the summer, just so you know.
Have you? Yeah. Well, I don't think you want these. They ended up being involved in the water
damage. Yeah.
Water damage. And
yeah.
Unfortunately, because they were actually interestingly enough, at the end of his life, what we found out from neighbors was that he worked on motorcycles, he modified motorcycles, he did custom, he would take a standard bike and make it a custom bike, did all that stuff in his garage and stuff, right?
These are some bad bikes probably that got destroyed then, man.
Yeah, but he didn't ride.
He just loved the thrill of getting his hands dirty. Trust me, I get it. I'd get it.
Do you? Okay.
I get it. That's like flipping cars. I love, you don't drive them for too long. My daughter asked me the other day, Daddy, do you even you say you like cars. Why do you always get rid of cars? And it's because, and I said to her, I said, that's the thrill of it for me. You know what I mean? It's like, it's good to have it and then get to drive something different. I just like the feeling of being behind different vehicles and engines.
Okay. All right.
It takes a while.
Okay.
That's a very patient game. That's for sure. But so well, all right. That is intense. That sucks that you had gotten the house and now it's basically
Okay. So what do you want to do?
yeah. All right.
Well, on the count of three.
Three,
One,
two,
two, and three. There I was, just going along, just being in a train.
With a cold nose and wind whistling in my cold ears and snow blowing in my cold eyes. I was just going along a long way, clicking and clacking over track, squeaking and screeching round turn, huffing and puffing up every hill, and racing the doggies down every slope. Then, poof, just like that, I jumped the track and became a plane with the wings stretching out this way and that, and in back, two cute little sideways wings and one cute little uppity tail. And I flew along a long way from the track and the train, a long way from the clickety-clack. Then what do I see but a tree? And poof, just like that. A clunk and a bump. I bumped the tree, a fat one, with very wide branches and no buds and no leaves. And when I bounced off, just like that, well, puff me up, I became a ball, a round one, and big with stripes round and stars everywhere. And I bounced up and down this way and that. I hit rocks, some flat and some smooth, some bumpy, some rough. I had so many snowbanks and I just missed a squirrel. And I startled an owl, so much so I made him say hoo and not hoot. Over I rolled, over and over, far away from the tree and the plane, a long way from the track and the train, a long way from the click and the clack. One big bounce more, and kerplop, I came down right onto the road, and a twig popped me, bow-bango, and bow-bango I go. And just like that, I was flat. Then, twitch me silly, a snowflake tickled my nose and another went softly into my eye. Many more of my friends came coming to call. We sure had a party that day, those snowflakes and I. My friends were so many and none wished to go. In a very short time, I was buried in snow. Then the moon came up and the stars too, and it was so dark, and it was so cold, and it was so quiet, and it was so lonely. A long way from being a ball with stripes all around, far away from being a plane with wings this way and that, a long way from the track and the train, a long way from the click and the clack. Then morning popped up. And ugh, whomp. Just like that, a snowplow came by. It bumped me a bump up and away. It tossed me by bingo, and by bingo I go. Off the road and onto the track where a train caught me pronto and pushed me along up hills and down, round turn after turn. We went such a long way. With my stars and my stripes and my wheels and my wings, I moved in to stay. And when all snuggled in with everything in its place, I said, I'm a train. But just as I said that, pow bango, bye bingo, twitch me silly once more. Poof, just like that, I jumped the track and became a plane and started my journey all over again.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Great reading. I loved your pace at which you read it, and I think that it makes it very easy to just listen to. I could be wrong, but it was very nice.
You want to say thanks very much for the voiceover guy and just have me do the voiceover.
Well,
I mean, you're doing the music anyway.
we're making some changes, but that was the whole point, right? To get us to a certain point where we could definitely handle more of the the aspect of what we were paying for so we can handle more of it on our own without having to worry about things. They're doing great with the illustrations and they do great with the voiceovers, and they've done great so far with our books, but I think we've definitely reached an evolution point where we can now take on more of the adding soundtracks and the sound designs and the voiceovers. And yeah, I think we've reached a pinnacle here, which is a great thing. We've learned something new out of this.
Yeah, but we're not going to go back and redo all the.
No. No going backwards. We're only going forwards. We learn and we move with what we learn.
My reading of the story is a good advertising tool as opposed to marketing tool.
That'll make a good podcast. It'll make a good podcast where they just listen to the story like, I wonder how I relate to this story. Or they'll say, I hated every moment of that. Either way, we'll be judged. And we'll get some data back. We'll find some information out about it one way or another. Well, folks, that means we've reached the end of our show. I really appreciate you listening. Please make sure you tune in next week for the next episode. Whatever you do, never give up. Keep on going. Whatever's in your heart, you hustle for it. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.